There's a particular category of Cold War inventions that rarely makes headlines, yet played a life-or-death role in some of the harshest environments on Earth. These weren't weapons, surveillance tools, or diplomatic maneuvers. They were survival items, built not for glory, but for endurance. And among them is a ration developed specifically to keep soldiers, pilots and Arctic crews alive in temperatures where normal food simply wasn't enough. It packed enormous calories into a compact block, held its structure in freezing conditions, and kept energy levels steady even when the human body was burning through fuel at double its normal rate. The ration was known unofficially by many names, but most Cold War personnel recognized it instantly as the Arctic Survival Bar. Long before modern freeze-dried pouches and energy gels, this Cold War ration kept men functioning in temperatures that shattered metal and froze exposed flesh in minutes. And it still works today, which is why it deserves a closer look from history buffs and anyone serious about practical survival. Before we break down how it worked and how it was used, it's worth understanding the problem the ration needed to solve. Operating in the Arctic wasn't just about staying warm. It was about keeping metabolism high enough for the body to produce heat faster than it lost it. Normal rations, C rations, K rations, and even later MCI packs weren't designed for environments where soldiers needed 4,000 to 6,000 calories a day simply to maintain baseline function. Add exertion, wind chill, and the constant threat of cold exhaustion, and you needed a food source that could deliver dense, fast-burning energy without requiring cooking or thawing. That's what led to the creation of the Cold War Arctic Survival Bar, a compact brick of fat, sugar, and fortified carbohydrates engineered to survive extreme cold and keep the human body running. The Cold War Arctic ration was built to deliver maximum calories with minimal weight. The design philosophy was simple: fuel first, flavor second, durability third. The Arctic bar was usually about the size of a soap block and packed with around 1,000 to 1,300 calories. Instead of relying on delicate proteins or water-heavy foods that would freeze solid, the bar used ingredients that stayed biteable even in sub-zero temperatures. Fats, sugars, and dense carbohydrates formed the core. This combination mattered because fats burn slowly and steadily, providing long-term heat, while simple sugars give a short-term burst of energy. When your body is fighting cold exposure, that dual-phase energy supply can be the difference between staying functional or slipping into hypothermia. Cold War survival manuals often recommended breaking the bar into small portions over several hours instead of consuming it in one sitting. This allowed blood sugar and internal heat production to remain stable. This ration supported soldiers in climates where standard military food simply failed. You know, cold weather doesn't just slow metabolism, it really wreaks havoc on equipment and logistics too. Frozen stoves meant no hot meals. Jammed fuel lines meant no portable heaters. Even water became a challenge, since melting snow actually burns more calories than it provides, unless you do it properly. Many units stationed in places like Greenland, Alaska, northern Canada and Siberia learned pretty quickly that heavy canned rations just became dead weight in deep winter. The Arctic Survival Bar came in to replace these with something you could carry easily, pocket without cracking, and nibble on while on the move. It was especially valuable for pilots during the Cold War era because, well, emergency landings in polar regions were a genuine possibility. Aircraft survival kits almost always included several Arctic bars, chemical warmers, and a basic metal cup for melting snow. For air crews, the ration was small insurance against the unforgiving cold. You can, replicate the principles of this Cold War ration for modern survival use. While you don't need the exact military recipe, the concept behind the ration remains extremely useful. A homemade equivalent can be assembled using high-fat ingredients like nut butters, tallow, coconut oil, honey, dried milk powder, and crushed biscuits or oats. The goal is to produce a bar that is calorie-dense, shelf-stable, and structurally solid in cold conditions. One reliable approach is to melt the fat and blend it with the dry ingredients until it forms a thick paste. Press this into a metal tray, chill it until firm, and cut it into blocks. These blocks can provide a concentrated energy reserve during winter hikes, cold weather emergencies, or long-term off-grid scenarios. The key is not taste or softness, but stability and caloric impact. A well-made bar can actually exceed 500 calories in just a handful-size portion, and if it's wrapped properly, it can last for months without spoilage. So, when you're exposed to the cold, your body is forced to ramp up thermogenesis, which is basically the process of producing heat by burning fuel. If you don't have enough calories, your body starts pulling from fat stores, then muscle, and eventually begins to shut down non-essential functions. The Arctic bar, interestingly enough, provided just the right mix of macronutrients to keep thermogenesis active for long periods. Learning this principle, it allows you to adjust your own field rations depending on the environment. In winter conditions, it's best to prioritize fats and carbohydrates, rather than relying on high-protein foods that take longer to digest and, frankly, don't produce as much heat. The Cold War manuals were clear on this. Protein sustains long-term health, but fats and sugars sustain immediate survival in the cold. This Cold War ration remains relevant because modern emergencies still demand solutions that work without technology. Power grids fail. Fuel runs out. Modern food systems rely heavily on refrigeration. In extreme winter scenarios, people often underestimate how quickly energy reserves drain and how difficult it is to keep internal heat stable. Having high-density emergency rations, either commercially made or based on Cold War principles, adds a safety layer that doesn't depend on cooking tools, electricity, or thawing frozen meals. Outdoor workers in polar regions still use similar foods today. Long-distance mushers, for example, rely on fat-heavy mixtures for both themselves and their dogs. And, interestingly enough, even ultralight hikers carry dense energy blocks that mirror the logic of the Cold War ration. The Arctic Survival Bar stands as a reminder of Cold War ingenuity. It proves that survival isn't always about gear. Sometimes it is about understanding the body's needs and providing the right kind of fuel in the simplest form possible. It was a small piece of Cold War equipment that had an outsized impact on survival rates, and its lessons remain valuable today. If you found this exploration useful and want more forgotten survival tools from history, make sure you subscribe to the channel, share this video, and leave a comment. More Cold War innovations are waiting to be rediscovered, and your support keeps this journey going.